So, good morning, everyone. Lovely to be with you. My name is Ulla Koenig, and I send you a warm welcome to this week's Sangha Live session. Lovely to be back with you after the summer break. And we're going to talk about the first of the four noble truths. We're going to talk about dukkha and what the Buddha meant with dukkha. But before we start that, I wish to give you a short outline of these sessions. So I will talk for about roughly 15 minutes, and then we're going to do a meditation with the very topic, or around the very topic we just talked about, for about 25 minutes. And after that, we will have some time for sharing and questions. And it might be because I like to, or the request from the Sangha, the community, was to give a bit more emphasis on the meditation. It might be the case that I can't answer all the questions if there are a lot of questions. So what we are going to do, Lois very kindly offered to collect the questions from the Sangha and send them to me after the session. So you will get a reply either within the next days or in the written, and no question will be lost. So if you want to ask a question, you can do so in the chat box, where you also welcomed each other so nicely. And if you want to help me, please write just in capital letters something like question, or even a reflection. It doesn't have to be a proper question there. Just write it in capital letters so that I will actually be able to find it. Okay. If you run into any technical issues as well, feel free to type that into the chat box, and someone from the community, or George, who is here with us as well, might be able to help you out. If you can't hear me well, if my screen starts doing strange things, put it there as well, and I might need to fix something on my side. Okay. And finally, you all might be familiar with the principle of dana, which means there is an open invitation for you all to come. And it's great that we have this principle of participation, which is independent of financial abilities and income. And yet, of course, Sangha Life and the teachers as well need to make their living. And if you can support us, it would be very lovely, no matter how small or large the amount is. And there will be a link for that at the end of the session as well. Okay, that's it in terms of housekeeping. And I shall now give you a short introduction today to the Four Noble Truths, and that first Noble Truth, which we want to explore this week. So you might be familiar with this concept of the Four Noble Truths. And it's a very central concept. Basically, we can say that after his awakening, the very first teaching the Buddha decided to share was around these Four Noble Truths. And what are they? I can send you the link later. There is a very short form, a very condensed form, and it is called, there is a noble truth with regard to suffering. And there is a noble truth with regard to the origin of suffering. So suffering has an origin. There is a noble truth with regard to the cessation of suffering. That is good news, isn't it? So there is an origin. And we might say, oh, that's a pity. It's good to know it has an origin. It doesn't come out randomly or mere bad luck. It has an origin, and it has a cessation. So it can end, it can stop, and we need to look into that. And there is a noble truth with regard to the cessation of suffering. And that is very good news too. That is basically our practice. It's not that just that, again, coincidence makes suffering end, but actually there is a path. There is a bhavana, the Buddha would say, something we can develop, which will bring momentum into this possibility of cessation of suffering. So each of these Four Noble Truths we're going to look into in the upcoming Sangha Live sessions. And we bring the focus to the first one, and it sounds so simple. There is a noble truth with regard to suffering. Okay, and we're going to look into this noble truth. And we're going to spend 5 entire mornings doing so. The Buddha, we can say that the whole process around awakening for the Buddha was around these 4 noble truths. 4 ennobling truths, they're sometimes called, insights into psychophysical dynamics of a human existence. What it means to be a human, it means to be a human in terms of hardship, and also how to deal with that hardship, whether it comes from the outer or the inner. It's a deep observation, a deep looking into those dynamics, which are true, and that is the beauty about it for all of us, independently who you are or where you come from or what you do in your life. These are, so to say, common denominators. No one is excluded from them, though the individual path might look quite differently. So let's read this exploration of suffering, dukkha, which he gave in his very first discourse. He said, there is a noble truth with regard to suffering. Birth is difficult. Aging is hard. Dying is painful. Sorrow, grieving, pain, anguish, and despair are all painful. Being stuck with what you don't like is stressful. And being separated from what you'd like to have is stressful. Not getting what you want is stressful. In brief, the 5 aggregates that are affected by clinging bring no satisfaction. I wonder whether you already heard that. I wonder what you're feeling right now, and please feel free to type it in the Twitter chat box. If you find this like a bummer, like what a way to start a Monday morning, I can totally get that. If it sounds cryptic, or if it sounds like, I'm aware of all the challenge life actually brings. I'm actually right in the middle of it. Totally understandable. So how do you relate to that? Or maybe it sounds even a bit cryptic. And yet I want to kind of unwrap this over the week, and I want to show you the beauty, which is just in that first noble truth. There is so much potential for compassion. There is so much potential for alleviating feelings of guilt and shame within that first noble truth, and I want to show you that. Maybe a new way to relate to that truth as well. It basically says that suffering and dukkha is the word which gets so often translated as suffering, but just hearing that, I wonder whether suffering is the appropriate term, because there are so many different aspects, and we're going to talk about that tomorrow. There is also the nagging feelings of unsatisfaction, the friction with life in the small and in the big. Dukkha is like an umbrella term for so much. But this friction with life, it is an irrevocable part of our existence. It always was. You might remember your past there. I have a friend who lately said to me in an uproar of irritation, he said, will that ever stop? Will things just for once be just fine, just for 5 minutes? And I found that such a beautiful expression of this tiredness we sometimes have, to say there is always something going wrong. No matter how hard I try, no matter how much effort I bring into life, there seems to be something always going down the wrong path. And it's very interesting how we relate to that. What is our expectation? If the expectation is, I can work hard enough, and I can try hard enough, and I can put pressure on all those aspects and others maybe, and then things will just come to that moment where everything is just okay, and it will be okay for the future. We might negate that first noble truth, which says this friction with life, it always was, it is, and it always will be part of our lives. And important equally. Now we can drop into despair and depression around that, but important to hear appropriately the words, it's a part of our lives. It's not all of life. It's not all of life. It's not all the Buddha was interested. It's not a depressing teaching either. But it has something very accepting right in the beginning here to say, what are we trying to get rid of? Is it a humane? Is it a realistic expectation we have? Or are we making our lives way harder than it needs to be by trying to come to the point where we can get rid of these things, where things just roll around smoothly? Yeah. And how we meet this suffering and how we approach it and what our expectations around it will determine our well-being to a very large degree. So it's almost a way of acknowledging this first noble truth, almost a way of safekeeping our heart minds. To say, oh dear heart mind, of course you can dream about a world, yeah, a dream about a moment in existence where all of this will be gone, and we can lean into that and we can dream how beautiful that would be. But careful here, careful to not mistake that for how reality should be. Yeah. Why is it, and that might give us a first hint why it's so important to recognize and acknowledge suffering. Yeah. Can't we simply ignore it? And in my lovely work, working with other people, where I have the honor to accompany people also through the hardship in their lives, I tend to notice the immense suffering which comes up when we ignored dukkha for a long time in our lives, and then suddenly life gives us that wake-up call. Yeah. Whew, and then it becomes really tough to say, wow, I did not expect, maybe on an intellectual level, to fall ill, to experience sickness, to experience loss, to experience the process of aging or even the process of dying. I did not expect that to come. Somehow I lived in this dream, yeah, and this sudden wake-up call, when we're unprepared, it can be so harsh. It can take us, tug away the carpet under our feet, yeah. So there is a very gentle way of approaching that, to integrate it to the degree we can into our lives and say, yeah, this is the first noble truth. Yeah, it's everywhere. And we're going to practice with this over the course of our day as well, if you like. So what are your perceptions around dukkha, around suffering? As I said, many of us will see, and I do on a daily level as well, come back into that dream state, that trance state, where I see the suffering or friction with life just as a mistake. Oh, this is not supposed to be like that. Relationships are not supposed to be so complicated. My body is not supposed to be so demanding. Now it wants sleep. Now it wants food. Now it hasn't. I cut myself in the finger this morning, cutting bread. Yeah, and this body is fragile, and to just notice that, yeah, it's not a mistake. It's something which will, one way or another, occur again and again in our lives. And I feel a relief seeing it this way, to say, yeah, it hurts. It's not beautiful. It doesn't make me do hops in the morning when I cut myself in the finger, but there's no need to blame and there's no need to shame myself. Anyways, this body is fragile and it will every now and then, just to a moment of too much speed or a neglect of mindfulness, be cut in the finger. Yeah, that's it. And how often, and that's another perception of suffering, do we see it as a mistake, or we see it as a personal failure? Yeah, to suffer, a personal failure. If I would try harder, if I would try better, if I would be a better person, I could control the dynamics of life and I would not be suffering. And sometimes we notice there a real lack of control, yeah, where things are just not under our control and we feel so helpless and we feel so much despair because all of a sudden our image of control, yeah, our image of I am the one able to control those dynamics, it, yeah, goes up into smoke and we feel like, whew, yeah, I feel so helpless now. Now that this image is gone, I feel so much despair. Or we think we're the only ones who are not able, and then we feel shame. Or others come to us, and that is equally as much a problem or can be a burden, to say, you should be able to control this. You should be able to avoid this harm, avoid this suffering, avoid this problem, avoid this conflict. Yeah, and we get burdened with this idea to say, if you would try hard enough, you would be able to unmake the suffering happening. Yeah, so these are perceptions around that. And maybe important to mention at this point that we're not on a path which says there is no suffering, just endure, just don't make such a fuss about it. It still is saying, yes, suffering is unpleasant. Suffering is deeply unpleasant. And some of the suffering we experience is hard, it's really hard. And what comes up for me is a huge wave of compassion. Maybe thinking of my own life, thinking of the life of my loved ones, thinking of your lives and all the people out there. How many of us are going through those smaller and larger struggles, which just are part of human life on a daily, hourly basis? And we might feel overwhelmed by that, or we might just come up with a tenderness and saying, yeah, not an easy thing to be a human being on this planet. It's just to be any being on this planet, because it involves so much challenge. And the tenderness for ourselves and the tenderness for others, which can come up within this challenge called life, it's enormous. There's such potential there. And if your reaction is not tenderness, but a feeling of overwhelm or despair, or just like impulsively trying to avoid that perspective, that's okay too. And there is a lot to explore there. Just to being curious about, well, why don't I want to meet that? And that would be a good reason, something to look into. So what does the Buddha's path actually aim for? After you heard that, and I just want to read it very quickly again. Birth is difficult, aging is difficult, dying is painful, sorrow, grieving, pain, anguish, and despair are all painful. Being stuck with what you don't like is stressful. Being separated from what you do like is stressful. Not getting what you want is stressful. And in brief, the 5 aggregates that are affected by clinging bring no satisfaction. What is the Buddha aiming for? Because sometimes we hear this, that this teaching is about the end of suffering. But honestly, when you read that, sickness, aging, death, how could we ever end that? Can we get rid of all that suffering? And I think that the Buddha was a pretty clever man, so he would not have offered a path to the end of dying or the end of aging, but more a way to work with the dukkha in our lives, And to me, it's almost like a twofold path. On the one hand, we need the resilience to meet those aspects of suffering we cannot change or control. And those are capacities like compassion and skillful grieving and the process of acceptance, abilities to soothe and calm ourselves, to direct our focus and attention. These are, and you will notice that we are developing these capacities of resilience all of the time in our practice. And the other one is a development of wisdom and skill, to be in the Word and reduce suffering, and be within our, let's call it, inner Word and reduce the suffering which arises in response to those struggles, challenges. So, to sum it up, there will be, over the course of all of our days today, and it's lovely to be so sure of something, because it's such a human common denominator, a small or a large amount of suffering, just friction, just a not okayness with experience today. Can you see that? And can you acknowledge that? Just the simple sentence of saying, oh, there is dukkha. Cutting yourself in the finger, no big deal, it will heal, it will be fine, this finger. But just to say, ouch, pain, body, sense, through the nerves, pain feelings, ouch, that is dukkha, Staying in the queue, being in the public transport, having too much people around it, not enough space. Just noticing, oh, that is dukkha, The small and the large things. And just observe, maybe you get a glimpse of that today. How do you tend to react in these moments? What is the initial impulsive response to dukkha? Maybe you can collect, just notice a couple of those attitudes and beliefs around suffering. And then we can bring that into our session tomorrow. And maybe just this curiosity, what happens if you really truly acknowledge saying, yeah, this is dukkha, rather than trying to do something about it, trying to blaming, shaming someone, yeah, or yourself or others. What happens if you say, yeah, that is dukkha? Yeah, there we go again, dukkha. Maybe saying, ouch, that hurt. Yeah, this lovely response of compassion to it. Okay. Now, let's go into meditation with that. We're going to do a lot of compassion practice this week as a response to what might else be a bit, I'm the bearer of bad news this week, a bit burdensome. So let's practice with compassion for whatever response came up for you. Come or bring yourself in a comfortable position. We don't need to add to the dukkha, do we? We can sit comfortably, stand comfortably, lie down comfortably. And just maybe take a minute or two to make that body extra comfortable. What does it need? What changes in your posture? And to me, the many, many words of such a talk always have a resonance. So there might be some busyness in your mind. Could say, wow, even listening to many words brings up a bit of friction. There is dukkha. Now let's meet this body, this heart, this mind with a lot of gentleness. If you like, take 3 gentle, nourishing inhales and exhales. And if your mind is fast this morning or dense this morning, if your attention is not able to settle well, if your body is fidgety or very tired, can we maybe see that as responses to life? Our body, our heart, our mind trying to manage these bigger and smaller challenges in our lives. Maybe a nervous system which is on alert, trying to keep us safe, so that we might see these reactions to life as something which is understandable. Dear body, dear heart, dear mind, of course you are the way you are. We try to manage, try to cope with existence. And if possible, wherever it's possible in the body, invite it to soften, to grow a little heavier. Maybe there are those echoes within your body which are still reverberating with some experience. They might be dense or painful, very active. Maybe we can respectfully leave them alone for now. They need more time. And instead we can feel into those parts of the body which are already a bit soft, have a bit arrived in this moment, and can invite them to soften further still grow a bit heavier. Maybe you can gently invite those parts of our bodies which are so involved in dukkha management especially to soften. For example, our hands. Nothing to do at the moment. Inviting those fingers, those palms to grow heavy and soft. Maybe inviting the ears, inviting that activity of hearing to soften. To see if that is possible. Inviting the eyes to deeply rest into the eye sockets. There is nothing to see at the moment, and yet you might notice this flickering and movement behind the closed eyelids. So habitually scanning the environment for information. Maybe gently with your mindfulness, just drawing smaller circles around your eye sockets, feeling into those smaller muscles, and invite them to soften, to relax as best as they are able to this morning. And you might well not be able to soften some of those areas, and that would be okay to just remember. Body, heart, and mind are trying to manage dukkha. They might be on alarm, and it might not be easy to convince them that they are actually safe in this moment. You could invite your entire face to go soft, We have this face as this canvas for social interaction. And there is no need to interact right now. No need to be someone for somebody. If you like, you could experiment with just leaning back a bit. You're leaning into life a lot, trying to get it a little easier. And maybe now our meditation is the moment where we can lean a bit back from it. Let me unhook for a moment. And maybe you find some place in the body or within the breath, in the listening, which feels fairly okay, or just a bit comfortable. And maybe we can bring our attention there to savor it, to feel it out with our mindfulness, our awareness. Choose whatever feels okay or comfortable or inviting to you. Give yourself permission to really feel that out. We can come to the challenges, the tight places, the active places later again. We will do so. We can say, dear heart, mind, I hear you. I'm there for you in a minute. But for now I need to nourish myself, soothe myself. Maybe we can see that as our place of refuge, our experience of refuge, place to, an experience to come back to to be nourished and soothed. Maybe you notice every now and then an experience of pain or distress, challenge, of tightness, of activity coming up into the forefront of your awareness. And what if we hold that just in compassion, just another attempt of the right mind to manage life, and there. Maybe be with it, granted your attention for a moment or two, and then not pushing it away, not denying it, just leaning back into the comfortable experience, however small that might be for you this morning, reconnecting with that which feels grounded, calm, steady, maybe a bit comfortable. Maybe you can notice to say, yes, there is this reaction to life, this stress, this tension, and not either or. And there is some amount of calm, groundedness, openness, warmth, softness, somewhere within the body, the experience as well. And compassion allows both to coexist. They can both be there. Maybe there's this feeling of tension, agitation, unwell-being of any sorts within some area of your body. And just notice that a couple of centimeters above or below, before or behind that, there might be a sense of spaciousness, softness, warmth, which you can also recognize, even lean a bit into if you need it to hold the balance. And if you're not able to settle at all, if the attention is hopping, the body's really aching, we can just recognize that, saying, wow, there's a lot of response, a lot of reaction to challenge today. And compassion can just say, ouch, ouch, that is hard this morning. It's not easy to be with this aching body, this alarmed nervous system, this conflict and this loss in my life. It's just not easy. And I feel the ouch, the impact of that right now. And hold yourself companionship in that, in being with that challenge. No need to solve it and to comment it and to understand it even. Just feel the ouch and the reaction to the ouch. And see what that effect might be. Very gently we end this meditation. Don't yank yourself out of it. Maybe gently start moving the toes and the fingers. You could stretch and yawn and sigh. Just feel what is good for the body right now. And please take your time. No need to hurry this morning. Not right now. And whenever you feel ready, you can open up the eyes and come back to the screen. And we're going to see what came up for you, either during this practice or during my talk. Maybe a small reminder that this week's talk and theme might not be for the situation in life you are right now. I find it immensely beneficial to talk about it, to bring it into our conscious awareness, to say, suffering kind of belongs, even if you would like to have it differently. But depending on the resources you have right now and the challenges you're meeting, it might just not be the moment. These things get recorded. These things are available at a later point in time. So don't overwhelm yourself if it feels like overwhelming. And I hope with these compassion practices, in addition, that it becomes something insightful. Okay, so what came up for you during this practice, hearing this talk? Any questions, any responses to it? And while you might be typing, I sent you the link to the sutta I was talking about. And this is the sutta, the very first discourse the Buddha gave. And there you find the Four Noble Truths as well. Yeah, some people write about the relief. Yeah. The loneliness. Someone mentions loneliness. Yes, this is dukkha, being separated from what we love. And sometimes it's that what we love is this need for connection. So whenever we feel lonely, we can acknowledge that to say, that is dukkha right now. Feeling lonely is dukkha. And on the other way around, I know that as well. Having too many people around you for too long a time to acknowledge, and that is dukkha too. And sometimes we find the dukkha in the relationship, saying, well, one day I want closeness and the next I want distance. And wouldn't it be much easier if we could want the same thing all of the time? But we just notice I can't control that either. I can't control my needs. Yeah. And that can be dukkha at times. So there is dukkha in a lot of varieties. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Beautiful. So Ruth is writing, I'm just about to have that conversation with my husband about ending our marriage of 22 years. Yeah. I want to meet him with a soft heart, and I know that there will be a lot of blame thrown at me. Do you have any suggestions at how I can meet this? Yes. I don't want to meet it any longer with my own stories of blame. Yeah. Blame and shame are usually such good indicators for there being dukkha in a relationship with oneself, with experience with another. Yeah, to say, there is something unacknowledged here. And maybe I'm just stumbled over the word, I'm going to have that conversation. From my experience, there's never that conversation, and that the decision might be made in that conversation. Usually it's a process, a long process. And what I notice about that loss and integrating that loss in life, it takes such amount of time. Yeah, it takes amount of time and confidence in keeping that heart of yours open. Yeah, keeping and nourishing that heart in ways which allows it to stay open. Yeah, to notice that the blame of the other and our own blame might be a momentarily incapacity to handle that loss and handle that pain and handle that dukkha. It feels awful. And if it feels awful, it would be so easy if we could blame someone for it, because then the other one could change something and then things would be okay, wouldn't it? Yeah. So that is the dynamic of blame. It's a sort of blindness to the many facets and the causes and conditions of dynamics, and saying, if you just would make things differently, if you just wouldn't be doing it, everything would be all right. And that's usually kind of the storyline which goes with it. So what does your heart need on the long run? We're talking the long run here, to stay open. Yeah. What boundaries might we need to set, for example, with that sort of blame? Can I have a long-term perspective on this? And can I see the blame as something which the other might turn to if he or she feels at a total loss at times? And that is just a glimpse, Ruth, about what that process might be about. So feel free to reach out if you like. So Marion is sharing that skull pain and fatigue are bad this morning. How to stay with my body then? Great observation. I keep thinking to myself, love and care, love and care, love and care, and so could stay in the meditation. Yes, Marion, you are naming a very appropriate point here. Sometimes the body is not an appropriate place to find that groundedness, softness, warmth. Yeah, that was all those slightly comfortable feelings I was describing earlier. And you did very well in using sort of like a mantra, to be your anchor, to be your appropriate anchor. So if you feel your body, there's a lot of dukkha in the body and a lot of reaction to that dukkha in the body, maybe go somewhere else with your attention. You could go into the hearing, you could go into feeling the space around you, you could go into a mantra, you could go into metta practice, to have something which you can put to the word and. Yeah, there is the skull pain and the fatigue, and there is this reaction to the words love and care, love and care, love and care. Well done, Mariam. Yeah, and you just see those responses of compassion here. This is what happens. This is what we do with each other for some time. We hear about the suffering of the other. Our empathy allows us to relate, and compassion wells up. Yeah, compassion wells up. Sometimes compassion doesn't well up, and that is okay too. And then we can go into an exploration of what is keeping my heart from expressing compassion. What do I need to take care of? What do I need to understand? Not blaming and shaming either, but just going into an explorative process. What else comes up for you? I wonder how you relate to that theme. I wonder if you will be back tomorrow. Maybe you find another time to talk about that. When I realized that those niggles and pains, those conflicts in my relationships, those needs are not a mistake, I felt a huge relief, because I felt unburdened in many ways to say, okay, the practice might be way different now, more accepting and more how to be with that with a form of grace and dignity. But I don't need to push myself so hard, because that point where everything will be just all right, where relationships will run smoothly, where my body will run smoothly, all that will not manifest. And that I find that immensely perspective changing. And you will experience that on a daily level. It's not all dukkha, it's sukha as well. That was the opposite word the Buddha often used. And I think he related to dukkha so much because there is so much reactivity in relationship to dukkha. It's easy to be with the sukha, yeah. But wow, do we react to dukkha at times. Someone wrote that the teaching comes at the right time. I have a lot of fear activated at the moment, which I find difficult to work with. Yes, and that can be something like the fear, the depression, the anger reaction. Yeah, and just to acknowledge, to say that is feeling, that is dukkha too. Boy, we don't have an easy time with those minds as well, which go into those impulsive and very dense states at times. So I can put my hand on my heart and saying, wow, being with that anxious mind on a daily level is really a challenge. And I find that people who go through phases of depression and anxiety and all kind of challenges around our heart minds, they are the heroes of the everyday. Yeah, being with an anxious mind, being with a depressive mind on an everyday, being met with that dukkha on a daily level, that needs some time of some amount of real strength. Yeah. So Catherine wrote, how to cultivate patience in developing better ways meeting dukkha. I understand the concepts, but still very reactive, and then cross with myself for being reactive. Yes, Catherine. So not quite knowing what you did already. I just find it interesting how quickly we ask teachers, what to do about that. Yeah, so it's the fourth of the Noble Truth is the questions of what to do about that. Yeah, and before that there are 3 steps actually and the very first step we're meeting this week is to be with it. Yeah, integrate it, saying yes, this is painful, and yes, this causes me a lot of stress and trouble, and how am I relating to that? How am I meeting that before doing anything about it? So I wonder whether there is a response to that, Catherine. Fiona is writing that, she appreciates this week's theme, and it helps her to give her some space around the blame and shame I usually get into around suffering. Yeah. Speaking about liberation, that is a form of, we haven't yet done anything about the dukkha itself, have we? But relating to it differently, alleviating these feelings of blame and shame, that is a liberation right there. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Fiona, for sharing. Christian is writing, working with somatic inquiry at present, so lots of emotional, physical dukkha to explore at present. this week's teaching will be so useful. Yes, Christian. And maybe just keep in mind what we did today. We need to come from a form of resourcefulness, to meet this dukkha. If we don't have any resources, the mind would just go in reaction, just go into fire, touching that painful experience. If it has no groundedness, no resources, no spaciousness, it will be a vessel too small to be in touch with that emotional, physical dukkha you're mentioning. So it's so important that we remember to find those places which are soft, find those places which are comfortable. And as we heard earlier, the body might not be that place. So listening, seeing the beauty in the world, appreciating the last flowers, whatever it is, am I nourishing body, heart and mind enough to be in touch with dukkha? Good. Yes. Yeah. Wow, so many responses to Ruth's question just shows us shared humanity, doesn't it? Relate dukkha in relationships. We have so much dukkha. We speak a lot of dukkha and problems with ourselves in practice, in meditation practice. But how much dukkha is there actually within our relationships? Yeah, friendships, loved ones, children, and that belongs all too. And we can call that dukkha. We're saying, well, relationships are just not easy. Yeah, just not easy. Two imperfect people meet each other in an imperfect world. That is a recipe for disaster right there. And we can acknowledge that. Relationships are not easy. And I can do my best, but there will be an amount of imperfection in relationships all of the time as well. Right. Tomorrow we're going to talk about all those different types of dukkha. Maybe we just know about dukkha in those large terms. Yeah, there are way smaller ways of dukkha which impact us on a almost momentarily level, and I think it's important to know them and to see them. So this is our plan for tomorrow. And just a small reminder, right at the end, the Sutta study course, which was initiated in these sessions last week, this time will start again Monday next week. So if you're interested in reading the suttas together in a small, it's not in a not so small group, 30 people applied already, feel free to have a look, because I know that some of you might be interested to join and haven't got the information. Here is the link for that. And I wish you all a compassionate day whenever you meet the dukkha, and compassion for what it means to be a human being, compassion with others who just struggle the way we do. And then I'm very curious to see what you bring with you tomorrow. And thank you for everything you shared with us today. Thank you.